Hello, my name is Adam Swartz, and in today's video, I wanted to share a simple yet very powerful tool that I've discovered in terms of setting up a weekly tracking system, which involves not only tracking your practices and your projects, but mostly to weave in and reaffirm your values. Now, if you're like me, you're drawn towards productivity, but you may also be very wary about the amount of emphasis that we have in our lives to be productive. There's nothing wrong with being productive, but if you start to push it too far, I find that we begin to almost lose our humanity a bit too much. We start to think of ourselves almost machine like. How much can I churn out week to week? This can be at odds at times with our deeper value systems in terms of what is our aesthetic, what is our ethics, what are our desires to live a life that is meaningful to us. Now, this has its own form of work in terms of really coming to terms with what your values are. But assuming you've begun to think about that, the next question that I find is how do I keep that at the forefront of my consciousness as I work towards the tasks which are important to me in my life? So, if that's of interest to you, definitely stick around because this is a very simple weekly spread, and I'd love to share with you how to schedule your values, fulfill your practices, and get things done. Now, I love journaling, and I've been doing it for many years, primarily in two different ways. The first is allowing myself to really take the time to write deeply about how I'm feeling about my life, about certain insights I'm getting. It's essentially what I think Park Notes refers to as using it as a soliloquy, that inner psychological dialogue that we have with ourselves, where you really get to unpack the different feelings that you have and the greater sense of awareness. I have found this almost to be like hygiene, like it's something I need to do. And I try to take my time with it. I'm actually trying to take a literary approach. I'm trying to really pay attention to my inner world and document it accordingly with the right word and the right sense and structure. The second way I've used journaling is how I think a lot of people do, which is as a productivity tracker. This weekly spread is basically two big components. So the first page of this spread is the tracking page, and I'll draw your attention to the first category, which is that every week has a theme. Now, this doesn't have to be a different theme every week, but it does need to be something that's meaningful. It could be a quote that you found, it could be words that mean something to you. I'm using grace and gratitude because that's some words that I'm really trying to absorb into my life and put into a daily practice to recognize that there is grace in this world and to recognize there's so much to be grateful for. So that places me right in alignment with my values. And I'm coming back to this sheet on a daily basis because I'm also tracking my practices. Now, your practices could be all kinds of things. It could be writing, it could be cooking, it could be any sort of activity. I'm sort of focused on my physical culture these days. So I've got basically a morning routine that involves some stretching, some cold shower exposure, and sunlight, which I have to admit I'm really struggling with. I tend to kind of want to just go from stretching to my shower to just drinking coffee and writing in my journal. But I'm really trying to make myself go outside and get that sunlight that Andrew Huberman is always talking about. So I will keep you posted on how that goes. Then I have my physical activities that are sort of the centerpiece of my physical culture, which is for me, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I try to get there twice a week. That's about all my body can take and mind as well. I do some training in terms of strength, conditioning, and then I do yoga, which could either be at a formal class or it could be something that I do at home off of a YouTube video. Those three elements make up a really nice physical culture that I'm enjoying living in. And I just want to make sure that I'm getting a nice regular balance of all three of those elements week to week. And again, I'll be coming back daily to mark off when I do that, which is satisfying, of course, but also it puts me back in relationship. I get to review that there's the theme of the week and then I'm going to be reminded of it. And then finally, of course, the most straightforward one would be the projects. I think on this page, it's most important to really list the 1 to 3 major projects that you want to hone in on. There are tasks that we're going to get into on the next page, but in terms of keeping your focus aligned with your values, I would suggest no more than 3. Now, if you look at the next spread, this I have to give credit to Matt Ragland. This is very much based off of his weekly minimalist spread, which I found very useful. With one notable difference, I created basically a category here on the side, which is my task list. And then on the opposite side of the week, I've created essentially a migration list. This migration list also can act as a catch all, meaning as I'm going through the week, things pop up. And I may not want to be able to deal with it either there or add it to a further task. I may not want to get to it. But if I have a designated spot to place it in, then I can determine how I want to migrate it forward. And that I find that that really helps with my mental space in terms of offloading the mental load of worrying about these things, and just knowing there's a dedicated space where I can look at it at the end of the week and decide how am I going to deal with it. From there, I try to keep things fairly minimal. I do use Google Calendar. My primary income is as a personal trainer, and so most of my clients I'm using Google Calendar with. It seems to be really useful. So I will refer to that for the blocks of time where I'm occupied with clients. But what I'm really looking for in this spread are those spaces where I can devote the time towards my projects, towards my practices that align with my values. And that's where I find that this spread is really useful, because you'll notice there's all kinds of places where I can say, okay, I'm going to make this happen towards that project. I'm going to use this little block of time here to fulfill these tasks. And even I like the fact that just naturally what happens too is the first 3 days feel kind of compressed relative to the last Thursday and Friday. Those get a little more open up as tasks get kind of kicked down the road for each week. And I kind of like that. That gives me a little more space on the back end to get things done. And the weekend, I intentionally keep very small. I don't want a lot of tasks. In fact, I don't want any work tasks. Anything that's there is going to be exciting. It's going to be a festival, or it's going to be an activity with my family. But I find that that's really useful for me to kind of have a visual sense of what the week actually looks like, with priorities and ways that I can then drill down on my projects, on the tasks I need to do, on the practices that I want to keep, and above all, of the values that I'm trying to embody. So that's it for this video. I hope this is helpful for you. Let me know in the comments what are some ways that you schedule your values into your week. Again, I will put a link to some other videos that I've made on journaling that I think would be useful for you. And thank you for watching.